Both the Liberals and the Conservative campaigns, they lost candidates today over controversial comments. Paul Chang, who they all stood by yesterday, he's withdrawn as the Liberal candidate in Ontario's Markham-Unionville riding. The RCMP has confirmed that they are looking into his remarks in January when he suggested a Conservative be handed over to China in exchange for a bounty. And the Conservative Party has removed its candidate in the Ontario riding of Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore. In a 2022 podcast, Mark McKenzie is heard expressing support for public hangings and suggested former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should receive the death penalty. The Conservatives have also dropped their candidate in the Montreal riding of Laurier-Saint-Marie. Stéphane Marquis says he was told it was due to recent posts on social media. So, Michelle, that's today. Calgary Confederation, the Liberals dropped a candidate. At Trois-Rivières, the Liberals dropped a candidate for failure to disclose past criminal charges and drunk driving. The Paul Chang one, though, Mark Carney stood by him yesterday, said he talked to him, said he accepted his apology and said he had his confidence, and today Paul Chang is gone. I mean, a lot of Liberals are saying this is an abject failure of issues management and just to respond to the seriousness of what happened. What do you make of this one today?
Yeah, I think it was an error. I don't really understand why he didn't just decide right away for what was clearly an inevitable conclusion that he was going to be dropped as a candidate. I think it's at this period of time, just before all of your candidates are kind of locked in with Elections Canada, where you do a final clean sweep and do those final checks. And, clearly the Conservatives have unearthed a few things on some of their candidates. And the Liberals are trying to do the same. I think that perhaps it is, you can be attributed to being the first campaign for Mr. Carney, and that he, it's a different exercise in terms of what the public acceptance might be for an apology of a very, very off-color and stupid joke, or what was supposed to be a stupid joke, and what's acceptable and what's not. It clearly wasn't, and I think it's of no surprise that he was withdrawn or withdrew, and it's just a shame that they lost a day in between.
Look, we talked about this last night on the show, and Brad Levine said he'll be gone by the end of the night, and I said, it doesn't look like that to me. I was wrong. Full marks of Brad, but, Mark Carney, he stood by Paul Chang yesterday, but a different tone today. Just look at yesterday and today from the Liberal leader.
Mr. Chang is a veteran policeman with more than a quarter century of service to his community. 28 years of defending rights in this community, and he will continue with his candidacy going forward, having made those apologies very clearly. Mr. Chang made his resignation, offered his resignation last night. I accepted it. As I said yesterday, his comments were deeply troubling and regrettable. We will move on with looking for a new candidate.
All right, so Kay, what do you make of that shift and the contrast with, look, the Conservative candidate in Windsor, the public hangings and hanging the former Prime Minister? I guess to the Conservatives' credit, they saw it right away and just took care of it right away. I mean, what do you make of what we're seeing on display, the different responses here?
Yeah, it is not okay to incite violence against a political opponent. In the case of the Conservatives, that was identified and the candidate was dismissed immediately. In the case of Mark Carney, it took him 72 hours to decide that those comments, or to have the candidate decide for him that those comments were not acceptable. This should be, to Michelle's point, cut and dry. And Mark Carney might be new to politics. The people around him are not. He's certainly not new to public life. And this speaks, I think, David, more to a judgment call. If you can't make a quick decision on something that should be as black and white as this is, what else are you going to struggle to make game time decisions on, to make those big decisions on? So I think it was absolutely an own goal, but there's an underlying issue here of just maybe not being ready to make some of those tough calls and tough decisions when you're in an environment like this on something that, when you're talking about violence against a political candidate, should never be acceptable as a joke, as something serious, no matter the context.
Well, Francois, Mark Carney called it a learning experience yesterday. I think he's probably learned something here because they take the hit for standing by Paul Chang and still lose the candidate, which the Liberals feel may end up costing them the seat. What do you make of because this has been a 3 or 4 day story now too, right? Like, what do you make of how this has been managed and where it ended up?
If not more than 2 days. I think the way he was describing things yesterday, I was actually convinced that he would end his phrase by saying he will no longer be our candidate. We all said yesterday that that was a lack of leadership and showing what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. He failed at that moment miserably, but soon we'll have to call him Prime Minister Teflon because nothing sticks to the man, absolutely nothing. So today he was able to get up and say, the guy offered us his resignation. I do not believe he offered the resignation. I do believe that there were some work done in the back room. But at that time, not every leader likes to take those human resource decisions, which are the toughest. I know it's my field of exercise, and it's one of the worst jobs. And usually people are very happy on top to say, hey, you go deal with that, because then they feel like they're shielded. But none of these decisions would be taken without the boss agreeing with it. So basically, it's as if he's saying to Canadians, I am protecting him publicly, but I will work behind the door to kick him out, which I don't find is a clean and direct way of doing business. But like I said, we can talk about this till we die. It will not stick on the guy.
Well, I mean, we'll see, right? Like, but Emily, I wonder on that point. Paul Chang is gone, but so are these other candidates from the Conservatives. So it kind of blends together now today in a series of both have lost candidates, right? Even though the decision processes are very different. How do you think voters see that and view it?
First of all, don't joke if you're running for office. Seems to be the order of the day, especially if it's very dark humor and humor that alludes to violence. It's just not a good idea. There is no context in which this is a good idea. To me, of the 3 people that resigned today, the worst case is actually the person who wasn't joking. And so I understand that there were words on the first 2 cases that are really drawing people's attention. But in my personal judgment, it's actually a lot worse to have a person, I'm talking about the Conservative candidate in Laurier Sainte-Marie, who actually believes that conspiracy theories about vaccines, who actually send out messages that send message of actually despising a lot of his own constituents, essentially disparaging message about part of the Plateau Mont-Royal, people who are actually part of the riding he's running for. And so to me, I think the Conservative Party reacted really well in that situation. But to me, that is actually even worse. And so there's 2 sort of cases. There's people not having the political judgment to understand what is not a good joke if you have interest in running for office. And then there's leaders reacting to that. And then there's people who are actually, once again, in the case of Laurier Sainte-Marie, believing in that Ukraine provoked its own assault and taking basically Russia's side in this. That is, to me, on another level. And I think that sometimes we need to understand that a person joking isn't necessarily believing that, but at the same time, understand that there are really serious consequences to humor that is made because not everybody can understand that joke. It can be an incitation to violence because not everybody understands that you're joking. And that, when you are in a position of leadership, is incredibly dangerous. And so in that sense, people were right to take those concerns very seriously. But people actually believing conspiracy theories and then running for office, that's, to me, yet another set of issue.
But we have an instance.
Oh, one sec. Kate first, then Francois. Go ahead, Kate.
We have an instance here where the CCP has executed 4 Canadians.
Yeah,
So
now that came to light after Paul Chang's comments, but still before Mark Carney's decision. Before Mark Carney's decision, just putting it in a timeline. Go ahead.
And it also came after the two Michaels were held for 2 years.
Absolutely.
So this is, I really do not see this as an apples to apples comparison. In the climate that we have right now around election and foreign interference, when you have a candidate who is a law enforcement officer, joking or not, about putting a bounty on a political opponent's head, to me that is clearly levels above what the other comments were. And I'm not saying that those are acceptable at all, but I do really think it's important that this is not an apples to apples comparison.
Okay, Françoise, then Michelle. One second, Michelle. Hang on. Françoise, I stopped Françoise for Kate. Françoise, then Michelle. I promise I'll get you in.
Okay, I kind of agree with you, Kate, in a sense that for me, they're as bad in a lot of aspects. To say that we should hang the Prime Minister is not a good thing to say either. My only problem with the Conservative guy, though, is that it was known. Anybody, probably not many people followed the guy, but it's not new conspiracy theory. So how many others and other parties, not just the Conservatives, by the way, and what do political parties do to make sure that their candidates are not going to be subject to those type of moments? Because I'm sure if we started doing the research, we can find more. Who believe exactly what this guy was posting on Facebook. I agree, it's totally devious, and I hate those type of comments. But violence or conspiracy theories, or for me, are all bad equation to go into politics.
Michelle, go ahead.
Sure, 2 quick points. Kate, by your analysis, then you should be actually outraged by the Conservative candidate in Windsor, who was talking about the hangings and the death penalty.
Absolutely,
even more so than anyone else, because that was a direct kind of threat.
It's never
and
okay.
Second of all, let's just be clear. Yes, the Conservatives tossed them yesterday. That doesn't mean that that's when they found out about them. And so it might just have been like they found, like all of a sudden, Mr. Chang was kind of had caught himself, and so the Conservatives might have decided, we better take another look and see, and maybe cut those candidates that we might have let skate by. So no one knows exactly when they actually found out about it. It just happened that the decision was made.
But what we do know is that they made the decision. They didn't wait for the candidate to make the decision. That's the key differentiating factor here between Carney and Paul.
So I feel like I opened a can of worms here. There is absolutely no advantage in trying to have a race to the bottom of who is the worst person ever. The only thing I was trying to say is that there was a person we haven't been discussing here, and I think I said why I think what they did is actually also really bad, although it's not as perhaps flashy as the rest of it. But yes, incitation to violence, bad. Conspiracy theories, bad. I think we're all in agreement here. And trying to rank those people are cancelled, and we're all the better for it.
Okay, look, and just we don't know when the Conservatives found out about the Windsor candidate. The first that came broadly aware was CTV, found it, and did a story on it, brought it to the Conservatives. The Conservatives got rid of the candidate. That was a podcast that was multiple years old. I don't know if they would have listened to every podcast this person would have done and found it in your vetting. The other guy, though, was all over his social media, which is a whole lot easier to find. And it seems like you should have that in front of you. So, candidate vetting, just wait till the nomination deadlines are over and all the oppo gets dumped in this election.
Oh, yes.
So, Michelle, last 30 seconds to you, because you were interrupted there a couple times. You want to just finish your point?
No, I had done my point.
Okay.
It was really about just knowing when the Conservatives actually knew about it versus when the decision was made.
Yeah.
It's still a big gap out there in my mind.
Yeah. Look, violence against anybody and conspiracy theories probably should disqualify you from public office.